Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 4, Episode 8 of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of the last episode. Ben is trying to get Cal out of there as soon as possible, but Michaela's like, right, he didn't do anything wrong, so if he runs, it's going to make him look guilty. It's like, yeah, but if they run his DNA and his fingerprints and you find out that he's actually Cal 5.5 years older, he's going to be locked up in the lab and we're never going to see him again. It's like that was the biggest concern, especially when it came to the Major. I mean, they know first and foremost how, like, if the government gets their hands on him, if the wrong people get their hands on him, they'll never see him again. Especially after he just ran into the passengers that were victims of the Major's experiments. But sadly, before they could do anything, the registry came and arrested Cal. And at first I'm like, okay, yes, he was the last person to see with the victim, the scene with Violet, but I'm like, why are they so keen on it being him? It turns out when Violet said goodbye to him, she kind of jokingly punched him and pushed him away. They're using that as being they didn't expressly say that, but they were like, yeah, last time they left, it was it was aggressive. That's what I'm thinking they're talking about. I'm like, are you completely missing the making out beforehand? Did that not? Because they were in the same spot when they were kissing, and she did that. But I was like, I feel like that's the only way they could have ever been it was an aggressive parting or something, when she was joking, punching him and pushing him away. It was like she was doing that jokingly, that if you look, how are you missing the rest of the context of that if that was caught on camera and stuff? But even the detective or the captain questioning him is like, oh, okay, what was it? What was that like when he kissed her? And he was like, yeah, it was the greatest feeling ever, and it lasted a whole 2 minutes. He blames himself. It's like, if I had just walked her home, maybe she would have been okay, And that is the heartbreaking thing. It's like, and I didn't talk about it last episode, but it's even more so heartbreaking because this might have been the first time, I don't know if they ever came up of him being younger, having a crush or whatever, but this is probably the first time he's ever been in, he felt something for someone. It's it was the beginning stages of love, man. You found someone, you connected with someone. It was probably the first time this happened, and once again, it's he was able to connect with someone outside of his family and just and that includes Zombie. A lot of this stuff, this is someone that's connected to all of this, so he has someone who will understand the 828 stuff, doesn't look at him like a freak, but also someone he can be himself around. He finally had that for the first time in forever, because, he had a hard time, even coming back, because if I remember correctly, didn't Grace have to deal with some of that stuff, maybe season 2 or 3, about people, or maybe even season 1, when people acted weird around Cal, him wanting to play sports or being back at school and stuff. He doesn't really have anyone, so to have someone now, once again, connected, but also kind of outside of this, at least outside of his family, to have that taken away, that sucks. And obviously Ben is doing everything he can. This is the first time that Ben's able to completely and entirely focus on Cal instead of just everything else. And so luckily he's got, Michaela and Jared investigating things. He's also got Drea on the inside making Cal's prints disappear, but even that's only going to be a matter of time they run him again. But the moment the blood is drawn, that's a whole other chain of custody, and she won't be able to interfere with that. So, but while waiting for Cal, he hears the beeping on the microwave, and it makes him remember Rad, because I believe that's season 1 stuff, but I want to say that might have been one of Ben's earlier callings. I don't think it was his first calling. It might have been maybe a second or third or something like that, but it was a pretty early calling if I remember correctly. And they're reunited. In fact, Rad is helping out with this situation of he's helping advocate for people who are wrongly convicted, but for him it's it's usually after the conviction process. He can't really do much for Cal right now. But them both hearing the tune, but it was a little different for both of them, and so he ended up putting it in the form of a song, but there were some missing pieces in between. And because of his experience with Ben, it's you are the bridge in this song. So he ends up putting it together. They correlate the 10 notes into numbers. Those numbers they correlate to responding numbers, and those end up being a phone number, calling it, and it leads them to Alex. I was like, because Kyle hadn't told Ben or anyone yet about his condition. And so Alex is like, yeah, this is what's happening. And Rab is like, because of Kyle's medical condition, they can advocate for him to be released immediately because that means he needs to begin, because it could impede with his treatment. So that's what they needed to get him out. And it's like, it is as serendipitous how everything works. But now it's also, because Kyle was never going to tell Ben probably until it was too late. But now it's like, it's like, no, like Ben now knows. And I love that moment of him hugging. Because when the moment Kyle saw Alex, he was like, he knew what was happening. He's like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, yeah, so much on the plate. He's like, no matter what's going on, you're my son. That will never change, even when I'm not the father I should be. He's like, no, Dad, it's okay. He's like, no, it's not. But he's like, it's okay, Dad. No matter what it is that we're going to face, we're getting through this together. That moment kind of made me tear up because I think it is finally a point where Ben is back to being himself. Like as Michaela put it, like last episode, he's trapped in this nightmare and he's finally awake from it, and he's able to be the Ben he was so lost in his grief and his pain over Eden and everything. And he said, like, right, the way he acted, the way he treated Cal, he apologized, like I want to say like last episode about the whole situation, but now it's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. And even that moment at the end was beautiful when because Kyle was like, no, there's a picture by my bed. Did you get it? He's like, I can't leave without it. And when he goes to lay down with Kyle at the end of the episode and wraps his arms around him, he sees that the picture that Kyle had by his bedside was a picture of him and his dad when he was a picture of Kyle and his dad when Kyle was younger. And it's like, that was something he didn't want to leave here without, It's like, regardless of where they are, he still loves his dad and he wanted to have something, like, in case, like, right, something goes wrong. Like, I want to have something, close to my heart, something important to me, and I just thought that was beautiful. So, going through the investigation, yes, everything is pointing towards Noelle, but they're having a hard time tracking her down. Obviously, they ultimately ended up going after Adrian because they were like, right, Adrian helped Angelina the most. So they went to him. Him and Egan are staying in the same place. Egan happens to have a calling about this. But he even admits later on, it's like, oh, I've said this is all about helping Adrian. It's like, oh, no, he's probably as good as dead. But no, what this is really about, it's me protecting myself. Because we haven't really talked about it, but the episode didn't really talk about it. It's just a scene we saw, but Egan, even while locked up, was piecing this whole puzzle together because I forgot about the whole photographic memory thing of his. That's kind of a very unique, special case about Egan, but he knew exactly where everyone, because that was the whole point. They were like, right, Egan knew exactly where everyone was sitting when it came to 828. So he's like made like a drawing and just basically like a board, an 828 board of just kind of like, here's the plane and here's these people, and he's piecing the puzzle together himself of like, okay, there's this passenger, here's this significant item and stuff like that, the guy who's the pocket watch belonged to and stuff. So what he's trying to figure out in the long run, I don't know. Maybe he's trying to figure out the mystery before the others do, or maybe he's trying to figure out simply for the purposes of, hey, I'm going to make the most money off of this if I can figure it out. I don't know what his end result is for trying to break out the puzzle. Because at first I was wondering, like, because that's the thing about Egan. It, like I brought up before, it's like, there's no point that you make it seem like you ever care about anyone else. Any helping of the passengers is simply your selfish need to help yourself. Because he's kind of like, yeah, basically he was helping out a kid that was being, bullied because it was like sometime after 9/11, and he's trying to help out the kid, and he got beat up. The kid who beat him up got a week suspension. He got blamed for a lot and got expelled, and it just kind of deterred his entire, career, all the good grades, everything he was doing up until now meant nothing. So for him, it's just like, no, I'm gonna always look after me. So that selfishness in him kind of got ingrained because the time he tried to do the right thing, it backfired in his face. But I think the argument could be the more terrible stuff he's doing, the quicker he's he's digging that grave for everyone, the deeper him and Angelina kind of go. They are not handling things in the best way. And with just the way the episode plays out, part of me is just kind of throwing this out here while it's in my head. I do feel like Adrian might end up killing Angelina at the end of all this because he might think the only, hey, I have to, I have to stop her because she's spiraling too much. She might end up going too far when this is all said and done, and he has no choice but to kill her. So, like I said, I didn't know if the blood on his hands was metaphorical because of the whole Noel being the killer behind everything, and that's kind of on him because he brought Angelina back to her. Angelina told her about all the people. So it's like, once again, it's all connected. Or is it going to be like, I didn't know if he's going to end up killing like Noel or whether he's going to end up maybe killing Angelina or something. And it is literal blood on his hands in that regard. So I feel like I said, where the episode ended up, which I'll get to in a second, I feel like that could be the direction things go. So, but either way, because Sanvi is, met up with Dr. Gupta and is trying to do everything she can with the whole figuring out what the major unlocked. And she was able to get one particular calling, but she could never, like, basically she used very specific sapphire. Apparently there's like generic store brand sapphire, and then there's like a very special rare sapphire. It's what a lot of the stuff that Olive has researched that's related to sapphire in the past and stuff like that, like the Ten Commandments being written on apparently written on sapphire or something like that. That is like Omega Sapphire, but I guess the Major was never able to get her hands on it. So because that Sapphire is like, it strengthens the callings. So because of that, the Major had to use generic Sapphire, and because of that, she had to like intensify the pain. The pain is what really called home the callings. So the more pain someone was in, the more vivid the calling got. So Sanvi wants to do that again with Egan because he is the one that has the photographic memory. He's the one that's had the most recent calling about Adrian and stuff like that. So they were hoping that it would help in this regard. But Sanvi plans only going to 40%, regardless of what it can do to help anyone. Going above 50, like forcing it on Egan. It's like, no. She's like, I'm not going to repeat the same mistake that the Major did, because a Major, like about like 50% and higher is when you start entering like permanent damage like the others. So she wasn't trying to do that. I'm not going to sacrifice one passenger just to save another. It's like, that can't be the point of all of this. It turns out that one of the large things of Omega Sapphire that was apparently Noah's, the piece of the wood from Noah's Ark that she even says, like, I threw it in a fissure. But for her, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. If blue sapphire is so important to all of this and we needed the Omega Sapphire, so why would that? Because for her, it's trying to figure out God's plan in all this. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. There's no way God would want us for this to be the way we go about activating these callings by like using pain and hurting people in the process. It's like, but even Dr. Gupta's like, right, we're still figuring this out, and maybe one day we will maybe have a better understanding of God's plan, but now it's still this mystery of we don't know all things. But it's like, maybe it's because, yes, that was to stop this situation at that time, but there is maybe some Omega Sapphire elsewhere, which we do find out later on there is. And because I knew Egan has something to, like, because the moment he saw that picture that in the Major's files, when he was there with Sanvi, she was testing stuff out, he recognized it. And the way he was talking later on, when he's like, oh yeah, like, you never know, like, your mistakes or something can lead you back to, I'm super paraphrasing, but he was kind of like, yeah, something you kind of may have ignored or done whatever firsthand could always kind of come back and help you in the long run. So it's like, apparently it was like one of his first callings that he took. It's a situation of like, oh, I'm supposed to help someone, but in fact, I'm just going to help myself. But now it's like, oh, that calling comes back full circle, because maybe it's a situation of, if Egan had done the callings like he was supposed to, maybe they would have had the answer a lot sooner. The reason why they didn't is because he hasn't been doing his part in the grand design. He's been ignoring it up until now. So that's why the lifeboat as a whole, the 828ers as a whole, have been a step behind, is because of choices he's made, Once again, it's like, everyone making the wrong choices affects the whole, So Egan looking after himself, maybe that's what he's thinking in the end too. Like, maybe if he can figure out the puzzle to all this, figure it all out, he can ensure his own safety, while who cares about what happens to the rest of the passengers. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why in the end he's going after the Omega Sapphire, because it's in like because it's almost like what was it, it was a temple to the Omega Order or something like that. So it does seem like there is another piece here in New York in particular. So Angelina had gotten captured by her mother too, because her mother wanted something special for Adrian. I thought it was interesting. It's like that never came after the Egan was like, oh, I helped out a little bit. It's like, you never really helped out with Angelina, so that doesn't really count. In fact, if anything, you betrayed Angelina. I mean, she was there, because I was about to say, it's like, I mean, I'm surprised she never did come after Egan. Maybe he would have eventually been a target, because it's like, right, you did sell her out. So, I don't know. But, mainly speaking, I think it's interesting she never went after the stones, but it's like, because it's like they're the ones who strayed her away from the path of God the most, because they're the ones that rescued her from you and your husband. So she wanted to like kill Adrian in front of Angelina, but Adrian helped Angelina escape, and she's like, "No, you brought the stones to me and they took my child away from me. So yeah, whatever my mom has in store for you, you deserve it." I'm like, wow. He's telling her she could still do the right thing, but she's not. Once again, she's so lost, and like legitimately, I don't say it lightly either. Like that girl is so lost and broken, and it's so sad, because she thinks like Eden will like fill that void inside of herself. It's like, right, you're making choices. I mean, do you not like? She finally pieces it together. Like, oh my god, my mom's the one that's killing people, the passengers. I'm like, but do you not feel any regret about it? It's like, yeah, you're the reason this is all going down. But she's just kind of like, if Adrian hadn't betrayed her like he did, none of this would have happened. It's probably like her thinking, and maybe that is the case. I don't know. But regardless of it all, Noelle was going to kill Adrian, and luckily, looking through the files of properties that Noelle had owned, like, because she was shutting down all her projects and stuff. And I love the guy that works for her was like, oh, you need a warrant? He's like, oh, you don't have one? Good, now this won't be official. Because for him, it's like, oh, you want to bust Noelle for doing some criminal stuff? Sure, I'm fine with that, because that means, like, he wanted to kind of give her, like, she needed her comeuppance, because she basically fired her entire staff. And basically the guy was like, yeah, I worked for her dad for 30 years, and in 5 years she kind of imploded everything, so. But ultimately, it turns out Noelle wasn't there. I want to say maybe at like one of the probably like Violet's murder. It couldn't have been her, because she was like a toll booth or something, caught a glimpse of her at the time. Turns out she has a partner. I was like, who could it be? I was like, well, there's always the element of like, I was like, it's going to end up being like her dad or something, isn't it? And the moment that cop showed up, I was like, who the hell are you? And I was like, oh, you're Angelina's dad, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, he is. So that was interesting. I mean, once again, it makes sense. Who else would be radicalized like Noelle to go after these particular victims? None other than Angelina's dad too, because they believe the same. They're both that like extremist lane of crazy, you know? So. Because with the whole, when Zeke was there with Olive and Eden, I was thinking like, oh my god, it's Angelina or something. She's going to sneak in, break in to get Eden yet again. It's like, you're going to break into this house and someone's going to get hurt. Well, Zeke ended up getting hurt with a bullet shot to the leg, but Olive ended up killing him in the process. She was just, knocked him on the head and pushed him out the window. Granted, it's like, regardless of like, yeah, he was going to hurt you. He was, because the whole point was to get Eden, because it's like, right, the only way our daughter's going to see that child for not the angel that she is, that the demon that she is that she has to see it. So it's like, they would have hurt that. They would have hurt Eden, because they see all of like the 828, but in particular Eden, like as, oh, these demons that are tempting you and straying you from God's path. And it's like, man, how having, that they are so deluded, they don't even see what's right anymore. Like, they don't see the evil in which they do, the demonicness that is them, But regardless of whatever it is, it's still like, Olive did take a life, and it's like, right, you did what you had to do, but it's like, it's still kind of a rough thing to be like, yeah, I'm still responsible for killing someone. So that's still kind of a heavy burden for Olive to kind of have to ultimately bear. But luckily, the day was saved and everything's good. And Olive reaches out to TJ, trying to, like, she hasn't been able to get any replies for him. And then he texts her, like, come outside. I was like, because I knew he was going to be in this, but I was like, I like that he surprises her like this, especially with everything going on. But he was in Egypt looking for he came to the same conclusion and was like looking for this Omega Sapphire, but he believes it to be here in New York. So they're going to be on the scavenge hunt for it next episode. Sad thing is they're going to have to they're going to have to make sure they get there before Egan. Like I said, I don't know whether he's going to try and take advantage of the Sapphire to get access to all the callings and find a way to save himself and screw everyone else, and or whether he plans on selling the Sapphire because it's so important, or going to use it as leverage to be like, hey, I have this Sapphire, you guys need it for helping all of us, right? So I need you to pay me an exorbitant amount of money for this. So that could also be his angle to it as well. But I like that, obviously Olive has had to, like, deal with a lot, but obviously, like, having TJ back now, like, kind of having, someone in your corner in that capacity is kind of nice. They've been apart for so long. But I also like that what Olive was able to be there for Zeke, too, because he didn't know how to tell Mick about, he relapsed, and now he's trying to, he just didn't know how to go about telling her, but it's like, Olive's like, you took a tremendous weight off of me, and she's like, I can't do it for you, but she's like, I can believe in you, and I know that Mickey will too, because she loves you. And I think that's exactly what Zeke needed to hear, and he ends up kind of showing Michaela at the end of the episode, and she hugs him. Obviously it's like knowing, like, hey, he's sure, like, okay, you might have relapsed, but it's like you are still going through the process, and because he was scared, I think, probably thinking like, oh, Michaela might, be disappointed in me. He felt like he let her down by him relapsing, so. But I think, telling her and being open about that and just taking everything one step at a time, obviously, so. But, obviously, there's still also the Angelina thing, because she's in the wind. Her mom's arrested. Her dad is dead. So she literally has no one to turn to now, because, Adrian's definitely not going to help you anymore after all this, because you were literally going to let him be murdered by your mom, and everyone, probably in the 828 community, knows to avoid you like the plague. I don't know if even Egan's going to work with you, but I mean, maybe, but then it's like, well, that guy sold you out too. So it's like, she's literally she was alone before, but she's even more so alone now. She literally has no one and nothing. So, and that's the problem. And that's when people get really, really desperate. And that's why like I brought up before, I do believe it's probably going to end with Adrian killing her, maybe by accident, or maybe it was just to stop her from doing something crazy. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.